Okay, thank you, sir. So, yes, a very welcome to one and all present here. On behalf of Anantrao Pawar College of Architecture, I, Professor Almas, welcome you for the webinar 5 Decades of India's Built Environment by eminent architect Dikshu Kukreja, New Delhi, in collaboration with 5 colleges from Pune, we APCOA, Anantrao Pawar College of Architecture, along with Shivaji Maratha College of Architecture, Bharati Vidyapit College of Architecture, Vidya Pratishthan School of Architecture, Baramati, and MET School of Architecture and Interior Design, Nashik. From past 2 years, that is 21-22, for the development of students, we have organized various sessions. And this year, 22-23, we have this webinar. The aim of this webinar is to benefit all college students with a wide platform where students can interact and gain knowledge. So now, before starting with the session, there is a kind request to all the participants that after this webinar, we have created a feedback form link for which some particular questions about today's webinar need to be answered correctly, and hence you'll receive the certificate. So thank you. Now I request Architect Priyanka Barge ma'am to give brief about the webinar. So over to you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Almaz, ma'am. And on behalf of entire Vidya Pratishthan School of Architecture, Baramati, my name is Architect Priyanka Barge. I am Assistant Professor at VPSOA, Baramati. I welcome all present dignitaries, faculty, staff, dear students, and all the participants. It's my privilege to have various schools of architecture under one roof to conduct an event together as a joint venture. And I would like to thank Principal of Anantrao Pawar College of Architecture, Dr. Rajendra Kohli sir, for organizing such a platform for knowledge sharing. So this idea basically was first introduced or initially initiated by Anantrao Pawar College of Architecture, Pune, and they have approached 4 different colleges to join them. And the 4 different colleges were first Bharati Vidyapit, deemed university. Second was VPSOA Baramati. Third was MET School of Architecture Nashik, and the fourth one was SSM SCOA Pune. So all these colleges supported APCOA Pune, and so this virtual venture was possible. So this webinar will be focusing upon the change in architectural design approaches, issues, challenges in the changing urban and climatic scenarios. We have learned to understand the importance of climate and various tools to deal with the issues by architect C.P. Kukreja, a legendary architect and the father of architect Dikshu Kukreja. He made significant contribution to the field of architecture in the last few decades, not just in India, but also at the global level. He started his firm he made significant contribution to the field of architecture in the last few decades, not just in India, but also at the global level. He started his firm with 2 people, but today it has become not only one of India's largest architectural practice with 200 professionals, but it has also been recognized amongst the top 100 architectural firms in the world. So now we are very much curious to know how architect Dikshu Kukreja has carried forward the thread to new threshold. And with this, I would like Dr. Rajendra Kohli, Principal APCOA, to formally introduce architect Dikshu Kukreja with his words. So thank you, sir, and over to you.
So very good afternoon to all. And I welcome all the principal presents here as well as all the students fraternity from the different colleges of architecture under Pune University as well as Bharati Vidyapit deemed university. So I want to give a just reference that whenever just I talk with architect Dikshu sir about this particular idea to have a interaction with our students of architecture in that webinar or online mode. So sir has given a positive remark to accept our invitation, as well as he has also given one positive thinking that why not some other institute or other students also can't be participate, so that it can be a wide platform where the students and the faculty will interact in this session. And definitely sir, it was a very good thought from your side, and we also never thought that in association with all our 5 architecture colleges that can be joined together with such a very, I suppose, invited or very much weighted this type of talk by a senior architect, Architect Dikshu Kukreja sir from New Delhi. So again, instrumental for this particular organizing our ex-president of Council of Architecture, Architect Vijay Garg sir, who has always been a mentor for all our institutes in India to give such a good personalities in architectural profession where students can be given about their career development, the challenges in profession, and new opportunities where the students will definitely have opportunity to interact with such a well-known architects. So I thank you to all the principal, especially principal and management of Bharati Vidyapit School of Architecture Pune, then MET School of Architecture Nashik, Vidya Pratishthan School of Architecture Baramati, Shivaji Maratha School of Architecture from Pune to have together to work on this particular webinar. And I also appreciate the hard work of all the coordinators from each colleges who has taken for last 1 month their constant and continuous connection with all the college, because you know that Baramati is maybe 80-90 kilometers from here, Nasik is another 150 kilometers from Pune. So like we have taken not only the colleges from Pune, so other institutes from this zone of Pune region we have together. But again, sir, I want to inform that after having this association with 5 colleges, again so many colleges have approached me. Why not? We also can't be participate. Then I told them definitely in the future time we will invite sir on a physical mode in Pune, and definitely with a big auditorium, maybe 500 capacity or 1000 capacity, we will organize sir's presentation for all our fraternity of architects as well as the students community in Pune. And definitely I suppose another 2-3 months we will planning for that, and your particular interaction, your views, and your all knowledge throughout this particular 5 decades that you are going to present today will be definitely benefit to our society, and students will also have a chance to meet you personally. So I am waiting for that moment also. So again, I thank to Dikshu sir, then his particular associate, Rajendra Kumar sir, also giving always a basic help to our all this event. And again, I will wish all the best for today's interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I request Architect Jagdish sir to give brief introduction about our today's guest, Architect Kukreja sir. Over to you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Architect Jagdish Kolle from Med School of Architecture and Interior Design, Nashik. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Architect Dikshu Kukreja, who is going to share his thought on 5 decades of India's built environment. Architect Dikshu Kukreja is the managing principal of CP Kukreja Architects. He received his B.Arch honors as a gold medalist from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, India. He attended the prestigious Taliesin Fellowship at Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture, USA, and received his Master of Architecture and Urban Design from Howard University. His work spanned through 30 countries that impacted 10 million people through 1,000 plus projects. His firm, CP Kukreja Architects, has international offices at USA, Japan, UAE, and Vietnam. His thought-provoking writings on issues on urbanism and environment regularly get published on leading national and international media. He has been closely associated with Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He has also worked as an advisor with state and national authorities on national calamities that occurred in country such as pre-earthquake reconstruction in Gujarat, post-tsunami reconstruction in southern India, and flood relief in Kashmir. Apart from his interest in design and academia, Architect Kukreja is also an active philanthropist. He initiated the CP Kukreja Foundation for Design Excellence to support design students from architecture and allied disciplines. Not only this, March 2022, India Pavilion got selected amongst the top 3 pavilion from 190 countries at the World Expo 2020 in Dubai with 1.65 million visitors. Also, it's one of the only 3 pavilions to be retained after the expo ends. In March 2022, his book, 5 Decades of Built Environment, launched at the internationally acclaimed Jaipur Literature Festival, where architect Dikshu Kukreja and Anurima Kukreja presented the book to former Honorable Vice President of India, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu. Also, architect Dikshu Kukreja conceptualized and developed Deciphering Design with Dikshu, a talk show hosted by NewsX along with Disney Plus Hotstar. It's a 8-episode series focused on the discussion with famous leaders from respective field. Architect Dikshu Kukreja selected as Best Citizen of India, Face of 21st Century Architecture in India, and featured in Who is Who of Asia. He got selected amongst the top 100 architects in world in 2021, 2022, and also awarded in 2018 and 2019. In 2020, he selected amongst the Asia's top 5 architects in the annual World Architecture 100 survey. He was received award Bharat Shiromani Award for Excellence in Architecture and Bharat Seva Ratna Gold Medal Award by Global Economic Progress and Research Association, Tamil Nadu. He also received award for Excellence in Architecture from former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh in 2015. Apart from this, architect Kukreja has also delivered many lectures in national and international summit conferences, design expos such as Shanghai Corporation Organization, NRI World Summit UK 2022 USA, Dubai Expo 2020. He is also conversation with Patrick Schumacher of Zaha Hadid Architects, The Future of Indian Cities. He also featured on Z Business, The Big Idea special interview with Dikshu Kukreja on architecture and construction in India. He has also delivered an excellent lecture on architecture, response to changing timings at TEDx Sushant Lok. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So now I request our today's guest speaker, Architect Dikshu Kukreja, sir, to take over with the session. We welcome you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I must say I'm delighted in this post-COVID world to be interacting with so many students from across different schools of architecture in Pune and its vicinity. And of course, I have to admit that I'm thoroughly missing the opportunity to be there with you guys physically and be able to have a one-on-one and in-person meeting and presentation. But like I said, in the post-COVID world, maybe this is one of the ways we are being able to exchange our thoughts, our ideas, our experiences. So I hope my conversation with you today and the presentation that I make is something that is engaging and of some value to all of you. I thank you very much to the faculty and the different schools and the principals for organizing this wonderful event. I appreciate the students for their active participation. And I also want to thank for a very, very glowing and humbling introduction. So thank you so much. But let me go ahead and start sharing with you and take you through this journey, what I call the 5 decades of India's built environment. And we decided to put this book together because, as we were approaching 50 years of our firm, CP Kukreja Architects, we thought that, looking back, we realized that actually and very honestly speaking, we didn't even, sometimes when you're busy with your day-to-day work, you don't realize the volume and breadth of work that you are ending up creating over time. So when we did this, we felt there is so much work and experience that is there that the firm has gained in the last 50 years, but it would only be fair that we are able to relate that and bring that together and share it with the design community, architecture students, and of course with society in general, because one of my missions is not just about creating iconic projects, but more importantly, it's about reviving in India the importance and significance of our profession, which at one time was regarded the highest profession that you could think of. But in contemporary India, I personally feel that things have slipped as far as our profession goes. And now the future of the profession lies in the young minds that are sitting here today, listening to me. Each and every one of you actually can make a huge, stellar contribution to the profession and make a difference. So I do hope that the story that I tell and the 5 decades that I share with you today can be something which inspires you. So give me a moment to get the presentation started.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I hope you see on your screen 5 decades.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is actually the book that we have created, 5 decades of India's built environment. Like I said, and why the 5 decades? One aspect is, of course, because the firm has completed 5 decades, but also because, as I will show you in a few minutes, how the transformation that has happened in Indian architecture has been more significant in the last 5 decades than at any other point. So this is the book which you see here. So the foreword for the book has been written by Mr. Shashi Tharoor, and the preface, as you notice, has been written by the president of American Institute of Architects and also who is the president of Union of International Architects, Thomas Warnier. I hope you guys get to see the book and I hope you enjoy it. But let's begin the journey. And this journey is about it starts really, I'm talking about post-independent India. But when we gained independence, along with that, a certain kind of tragedy also unfolded, which had never actually happened before in the history of the world. And that was the partition. And with the partition, the displacement of the largest population ever to have taken place in the world, and how India and Pakistan got created as 2 countries, followed by Bangladesh, of course, later. But suddenly, we all always believe that one sense of belonging is to the land where you are born or the roof where you have over your head. And overnight, whether you are a prince or a pauper, you are displaced from all that familiarity and safety and security of your home, of your belongings, is a very, very unnerving experience. Actually, an experience that I don't think can be even felt by any of you or me in this generation. But certainly if we speak to our parents or grandparents, some of whom experienced this, we realize the enormity of this event. So this is how people suddenly became homeless, including my own grandparents, who became homeless and landed up in Delhi. My father, who Mr. C.P. Kukreja, who actually at the age of barely 8 or 9 was displaced from his parents and almost in the sense of an orphan. He landed up in Delhi with no family, and he started his journey there. He was, no luxuries of school or anything. He actually was making his living by just selling soap on the traffic lights and on the streets on the road. And from there to reach where he has reached and helped the firm reach is a story very few can actually be proud of. But this is what the partition was about. But I'm going to now fast forward to the 70s. And the reason is that really the 50s and 60s was where India was just grappling to stand on its feet, because after the partition, as a young nation, we were more concerned about fighting famines and floods, drought and hunger, rather than building iconic buildings. So then come the 70s, and that's where the changes started happening. So the Prime Minister of India that time, Indira Gandhi, decided that a modern university needs to be created in India. And the idea of the Jawaharlal Nehru University came up. The first such university ever in the country to come up, which would be on 1,000 acres of land, which was right here at that time on the outskirt of Delhi, because it was in South Delhi. Today, of course, Delhi has expanded to tens of kilometers across. This happens to be in the heart of Delhi, but 1,000 acres of land, a university for 10,000 students, and it was a big competition. And Mr. Kukreja, at the young age of barely 31, went on to win this national competition where the stalwarts of the architectural profession had participated. And his approach to architecture, which continues to be our approach today, and today the world is talking about it, is about sustainability. So many of you young students who have been learning about green buildings and sustainable design will probably find in this image itself principles of architecture that we are taught in our design studio. And that by that I mean the selection of bricks as a natural material, local material. So, then you see the deep overhangs that have been created on the building facade, which are preventing direct solar glare or heat to be transferred into the building, double walls, etc., etc. So all these principles of sustainability are reflected in the design in the early 70s. But why did he win the competition? What was so unique? It was not just the architecture of the buildings, but what Mr. Kukreja presented was a new way of looking at education. Up until then, the IITs which were coming up, and otherwise in India, it was thought that the education is where in a campus, faculty is designed and planned to live on one end of the campus and the students on the opposite end of the campus. They are not supposed to mix. Here, the whole idea was turned on its head. So what you see here was for 10,000 students, 16 clusters were created, and each cluster had co-living, as in you have these three buildings which are here, which are hostels for 200 students each. So 600 students, and close to them was the faculty living. So the students and faculty were living close to each other because he felt that the learning is not confined to just academic classrooms, but learning goes beyond those hours also. And the time that students and faculty can get to informally spend with each other is also part of a very healthy learning process. And that way the campus was dispersed with student and faculty housing, and all the natural contours of this very rocky and sloping site were preserved to create a series of water reservoirs, which you can imagine in today's Delhi, where we talk about the whole city going dry. These have become such precious commodities. The academic nucleus of the campus was confined to this center right here, with closely knit buildings, with the principles as we have learned in North India of self-shading and compact design of buildings. So this is that academic nucleus that you see with the different schools of architecture, the different schools, academic buildings. This is the library building, which became the tallest building like beacon on the campus, and then other buildings as well, which you notice here. And then the idea was that the building should engage with the landscape, and students should be today, 50 years later, we are now talking in universities about multidisciplinary learning. But he created that idea in his design right at the beginning in the competition by creating these kind of corridors and colonnades and shaded pergola elements of connection between different buildings, with the idea that students from humanities can go over to take classes in sciences and vice versa. So this is the kind of elements of architecture which are driven out of the hot and dry climate of Delhi, where shaded colonnades or walking spaces are necessary. And then it's not about creating flooring patterns as we do drawings of flooring patterns, but the pergola, the architecture or element of the roof itself becomes a dynamic flooring pattern for the floor with the shadow that changes as the sun moves. You can see that pattern being created on the floor of this corridor. So that's the kind of architecture, very simple, very frugal, because at that time, budgets were very, very modest. Then there were a series of courtyards which were created, and courtyards which you notice creating so much shade and shadow, so they become informal places for students to step out and become literally the breathing points of the building, bringing in natural light and ventilation. We are talking of a time when air conditioning was not even a concept one could think of in a campus, except for a building like this, which was one of the first computer centers to be built in this country. And this computer center in the early 70s, when it was designed and conceived, that was the time when a city like Delhi and many other parts of the country, you used to have power cuts. Today, that is not a concept maybe you students are even familiar with. But at that time, can you believe everywhere in the city, you used to lose power or electricity for 7 to 8 to 10 hours, you would not get electricity. So in that situation, at a time when the cost of the computer which came in this building was almost the cost of the building, that's how expensive computer was in 1970s, it was important that the building is protected in a thermal heat gain manner so that even if there is no power or electricity, the building doesn't get heated up. So that's why this kind of element of a second skin on the building, and you can notice the influence of the deep overhangs and the shadow which is being created on the facade of the building. I just want to at this point ask, can you see my cursor as I'm moving it on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
sir. Yes.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to move on and fast forward to the next decade, which is the 1980s. So architecture, I believe, is always a reflection of society and its times. And in the 80s, things began to change in India, and you started seeing the emergence of a few cultural institutions. One such institution was the Karmapa International Buddhist Institute. Now, this was a project which was belonging to the Honorable Dalai Lama. And back in the 80s, foreigners were not allowed to travel to Sikkim. Sikkim was still a protected part of India. So Dalai Lama approached the Prime Minister that he wanted to have an institution right here in Delhi so that the world could understand Tibetan culture. And for that, this institute was designed and planned by Mr. Kukreja. Now, the challenge here was that the Dalai Lama wanted it to be just like the Rumtek monastery in Sikkim. Now, that monastery is designed in brick and in timber. Now, how do you design a building in Delhi back in the early 80s, where instead of timber, you have to use brick and concrete? So Mr. Kukreja went and spent a couple of weeks in Sikkim, understood the level of, first, the functioning of a monastery. And by the way, for those of you who might not be familiar, a monastery actually functions just like a university. Like in a university, you have undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral programs. In a monastery, the monks are classified by the amount of time they spend in the monastery, learning and preaching and meditating, etc. And that's how they are classified. So he understood that concept. He understood the design, building, construction technologies of craftsmanship in the monasteries. And then this building was created. So you can look at the level of detailing, but imagine this has all been done in concrete. And rather than just paint the building, this was done by using vegetable dyes, which today we start saying for sustainability, we should use low VOC paints. This is 40 years ago in India when he discarded the idea of using the synthetic paints and he went for natural dyes and pigments. So that's the level of craftsmanship for which 500 craftsmen from Sikkim were brought in to do this kind of work. This is the time of not creating AutoCAD drawings and using commands where you can quickly copy, array a design, but it was all drawn by hand, these drawings, and more remarkably, created by the craftsmen and the masons on the site. So that's the kind of craftsmanship in architecture that was done by Mr. Kukreja. These are the kind of drawings and the realization on the right-hand side. So I move on to the next decade, and this is a hugely transformational decade, as you all must be aware of, and that's because in 1991, India transformed in a very radical manner by the process of economic liberalization and globalization. Now, what did that mean to the architects and architecture of this country? Suddenly, what used to be a very contained profession and exposure of both clients and design professionals radically changed. Now you had the Cokes of the world, but also with the Cokes, the ACP manufacturers and curtain glazing manufacturers of the world come into India. So that was a big transformation. You had multinational companies come into India suddenly, and they brought with them a certain kind of design thinking and design philosophy. So you started having the glass and steel buildings, which you see everywhere in every part of our country, if I may say also sometimes, unfortunately so. But in that completely, and clients were swooned, they were in love with glass and steel and anything that was Western architecture, came this design project in our studio for the Ambadeep Towers. Now, this was a typical developer project. By that, I mean a developer who's creating a commercial building, a real estate building in the heart of Delhi in Connaught Place. And if some of you have visited Connaught Place, you know there is, of course, the Connaught Circus built by the British, but around that, the buildings built in the 60s, 70s, 80s were just what I call dull orthogonal boxes, which you can notice here, the building on the left as well. So they were just sort of a little unimaginative, volumetrically orthogonal boxes which were created, volumes of office space. From that came this departure, which has gone on to be recognized in Sir Bannister Fletcher's History of Architecture. I don't know how many of you still refer to that. When I was in college, it was like our encyclopedia. In that, this building has been recognized amongst the most notable buildings of 20th century in the world. Now, why is it so notable? Because here came many firsts. One of the ideas was that Mr. Kukreja felt that, while you are creating a piece of real estate, however, it's important to give back to society, give back to the common man. So he did various initiatives. One of them is that because this building happens to be sitting on a plot of land at the crossroad of two important roads of the city, so he created this public plaza, opening up this corner. So the FAR or FSI, which has to be built in this bottom part, was removed from here, and he took it up here. Let me explain you through these diagrams. So a typical FSI calculation would yield what you see on the top left of your screen, an orthogonal volume like that. From there, to recognize and appreciate the corner of a city and keep that visual continuity of the city for the pedestrian, he removed that volume and took it to a higher level and created a public plaza. Now, we all know that these kind of things exist a lot in Western countries and, even in the East, whether it's Singapore, etc. But, and of course, in our history of Indian architecture, you always had public spaces, the chalks, etc. But here, it had started going missing, as I explained in Connaught Place. So he created this public plaza. And then from there, what he did was that it was about, rearranging the volume of the building. And by rearranging, I mean, it was first, if you see on the left of your screen, these terraces were created. Why were the terraces created at these levels? Because from a statutory bylaws point of view, you need, as per the Delhi Fire Service, refuge areas in a high-rise building at certain heights. So wherever that height demanded a refuge area became the volumetric disposition of the building. By that, I'm trying to explain you that sometimes we architects think that statutory bylaws are limiting to our imagination. But if we can be creative, those limitations can actually become inspiration for creating our own architecture. After this, what he felt was that the facade of the building is like a canvas. Now, why not bring art into the city? Art at a scale which was never ever attempted in our country. And by that, it was not about creating murals or creating some art on the podium or in the plaza, but he literally covered the building in these 1 inch by 1 inch glass mosaic tiles, which create an art, an exciting, inspiring art for anyone who passes by here, finds the building pleasing. And in addition to that, the idea was also that, in a place like Delhi, I don't know how many of you have visited it, but the moment you go up on a 4th story or 5th story or beyond, you suddenly see how green the city is. Delhi is one of the greenest capitals in the world. It's a very green city, which you never realize when you're at a pedestrian level because of the traffic and the chaos, etc. So what he felt was that for a common man living in a ground-storied house or in a slum or wherever that person is living, he will, live his entire life probably never understanding or appreciating his city from this level, unless he obviously has his office on one of these levels. So what is the other way to empower the citizens? This is one of the first buildings in the country, amongst the first, to introduce a concept of glass elevators, and that too on the facade of a building. I'm talking about early 90s, which is 30 years ago. So that means any visitor to this building, if you're coming to visit someone's office and you take the glass elevator, what an experience. For the first time in your life, you might be able to see your own city from this level. So it's a very different approach to architecture about empowering and going beyond the dictates of a developer or the dictates of the client's requirements, but really being able to contribute to the city. These are some images of the Ambadeep building, the level of detailing, the inspiration from Connaught Circus, as you can notice in some of the design elements, and yet an obedience and a reference to our own Indian patterns of our Indo-Islamic architecture. That's the 1 inch by 1 inch. Again, this building was designed at a time when there were no AutoCAD drawings. So all of this was hand drawings and hand generated art. I move on to the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, and how architecture began to change from the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, started an awakening, an awareness in our society about looking at nature and looking at environment. We got an opportunity here in our office to participate in a national design competition for the Gautam Buddha University in Greater Noida. Now, for me personally, it was like a challenge where the firm had this rich legacy of being attached and associated with the Jawaharlal Nehru University, which Mr. Kukreja had won and designed. So when I participated in this competition, it was a challenge that, could we, while we had designed many universities across the country, but here was another very prestigious one coming back in the country, being developed in the capital city. So this is the image, not a render, but a real image of Gautam Buddha University, which has a very strong inspiration from Buddhist architecture. And at the same time, it has its contextual references and importance given to sustainability. So this is the academic core of the campus, where you see that's the library building. There's a large lake that has been created with an image, with a large statue of Mahatma Buddha sitting here. And so the design program in the competition talked about 5 different schools, academic class buildings. But what I proposed is 8 schools, because I said the requirement might be of 5 today, but we must keep in mind about future requirements as well. So I proposed that there should be 8 schools. I even went on to propose what those schools should be in which field. And lo and behold, when the construction of the project started, the clients decided that they should actually build all the 8 schools. the reason for one of the inspirations for me for why 8 and not 7 or 9 was also when I read about Buddhism, the eightfold path that Lord Buddha had spoken about, which inspired these 8 folds or 8 academic buildings. This is how the campus looks like, and this element of jali, which has been created as a second skin to the building, is not a jali as you see it in a conventional way, placed in front of a window, but it's literally like a curtain hanging from the top. So these are all stone jalis, and the design of the jali is actually an abstraction of the Buddhist text. So whatever the Buddhist text is, scriptures are, the jali is inspired by that. These are the images of the university. And I'm pleased to tell you that this university has been selected amongst the 10 best designed university campuses in the whole world in the league of Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford. Here is another project, a school, which we designed in the Aravali Hills in Gurgaon. So this school is also, again, a reflection of sustainability. It is the first platinum rated institutional building in the country, school building in the country. And it has a lot of principles of sustainability, again, you can see climate contextual architecture which has been created. And another element which I wanted to bring about, because I always feel that in India, we don't pay the kind of respect and regard to art and sculptures the way you see in Western countries. If you go to Berlin or Paris or London, the city is full of sculptures and art. In our country, that used to be a time, but now it has gone. So I thought that the best way for students, or the future of tomorrow, Indian society, the students should learn about art is not just sitting in classrooms like some of you are sitting right now, but actually by having art introduced in the campus. So as those young minds walk past these buildings, they automatically, subconsciously start respecting and realizing the sensitivity towards art, and that can go on to be an influence for them in latter years. So that's the master plan of the campus. So if I was to explain you a little bit about the master plan, the idea was that this is a very rocky site. And on this rocky site, there is hardly any water. So how do you run a building when there's no water supply? Because it's out in the rural area. So what we did was we found that there is a depression in this very rocky site. So in that depression, we proposed that a water reservoir should be created. Another reason for this was that we realized, because we do a lot of research in the office and we are a multidisciplinary firm. So when we start designing, we take the inputs of our structural engineers, electrical, plumbing, and even firefighting. So all of us sort of think together or brainstorm. So we realized that if there was by any chance a tragedy like a fire to take place on this campus, the site at the top of a hill with hardly any good vehicular access, that a fire engine could reach the site. So in that case, what is the point of giving a statutory requirement of a 200,000 liters or 2 lakh liters of a fire tank as an underwater tank? Because if you provide an underground tank, all that does is that it is going to be, just having maybe some rodents or reptiles like snakes or lizards or whatever swimming in it, because the water will never be used. So we took special permission from the local authority, fire authority, that we will give an undertaking that we will provide 200,000 liters of water on the campus, but rather than having it in an invisible underground tank, we have created a lake in the middle of the campus. And believe me, this lake has become such a beautiful focal point where students gather, sit on this area, default starts acting like an amphitheater. It becomes the convergence point of the campus. Incidentally, many Bollywood films have been now shot on this campus. And then we thought that why not now bring art into the lake also? So we engaged with the local village women there, and what they create as floral patterns or rangolis, we took that And that became the pattern by using all the broken ceramic tiles which were being wasted from the campus. And they became the pattern of this lake. So it has this magnificent artwork inspired by the local village people. And in that sense, it got them a work opportunity also, because they were then engaged to carry out this work. So these are different kind of approaches to architecture, rather than just about buildings which are screaming and shouting for attention. For us, it's about buildings which can happily, quietly, and in a very graceful manner coexist with the landscape around, with the nature around. So whether that you see in JNU or whether you see it in Pathways or Gautam Buddha University, that's the approach of our project, of our office. I move on to more recent times, and I bring to you the last part of the presentation, which is this last decade which has just gone past. Now, this decade is something which you all, or all of us, should be very proud of, because today India is globally, and I have been traveling around the world, and I see that the kind of respect, awe, and admiration that India and Indian architecture is beginning to draw has never been there before. Of course, when I say never been there, I'm talking about post-independent India and contemporary Indian architecture. And we at CP Kukreja Architects were the first Indian architects to be invited this summer, in summer 2022, to be showcased at the London Festival of Architecture. That was a big achievement for, you know, a prestigious place like the London Festival of Architecture wanting to showcase the works of an Indian architecture firm. So I'm going to show you a couple of projects from this last decade, just to give you an idea of the direction of how architecture today is progressing. So let's start with the government project. Now, when I say government project, I'm sure for some of you, the first thing that might have come to your mind is, oh, this has to be boring. It has to be something which will never be of a good quality, because only private people do good projects. Government cannot build it. But here, this is a project which I'm showing you, which is the new Secretariat of Madhya Pradesh. And this is a 1 million square feet facility, which we have designed. And this building, and again, this is not a render, it's the view of the completed building. I'm happy to inform you that this building and project has been selected as the best designed government building in Asia. So that's a huge achievement for Indian architecture. And I'm not taking the credit alone. It's to do with the client always, it's to do with the construction agency, and it's to do with everybody who was part of this project to make a building like this, which is being recognized at a global level. So for me, it was about how do you democratize, or how do you, in an architectural representation, how do you give that sense of empowerment to a citizen? How do you make a person feel proud of being an Indian citizen in a country which is the largest democracy in the world? So this building, which happens to be sitting on the top of Arera Hill in Bhopal, we created these elements that you see here. So there are these 4 elements which have been created, and these are, for me, the 4 beacons of democracy, because building, but when you see these elements, which was built in the 50s and 60s, rather than ignore that building, why not respect that building? So we created these 2 wings, the north wing and the south wing, which are flanking the old building, rather than an approach of just covering this building, hiding this building. I don't think that's the right way to approach what has been done before you in terms of architecture. So this was also a national competition which was won by us. And you can see these series of terraces which have been created, where the play of light and shade, the idea of creating shaded terraces so that the staff which is sitting there is encouraged to come out into these different levels of terraces that you see and enjoy a bit of nature, engage with the city rather than being just sort of cloistered in their office space. You can see the element of stonework, stone craftsmanship, which our country is recognized for. And yet the idea is whether you see the porch, which has that reference of the architecture of Madhya Pradesh, the stupas, the heaviness of this porch and stone and mass, rather than just putting circular, classical columns or something like that. These elements also are indigenized in their own way. I move on to another project which is more about smart, modern, contemporary approach to design. And this is amongst India's first transit-oriented development project. I think some of you in your colleges now are taking up TOD projects, but this is one of the first ones which we conceived in 2014. And it's about, again, giving back to the city in many ways. So this happens to be in the part of East Delhi, a part of Delhi which is East Delhi. Now, if you've been to Delhi, when you come to Lutyens Delhi, South Delhi, you see so much greenery and parks like Lodi Gardens, Nehru Park, etc. But when you go to East Delhi, it is like the armpit of the city. It is an area which is devoid of any green parks or public spaces. So what we decided to do was that even though the FSI in this project is high, it's about high-rise buildings, it's an FSI which Delhi has never seen before of 4.5, we still, out of this 86 acres of land, we decided to carve out a public park of 11 acres, which becomes an oasis, not just for the people who will be in this neighborhood, but for the entire entire East Delhi. This is how the overall project looks. By the way, this building that you see is under construction and is going to be the tallest building of Delhi. And the idea is again of modular cluster planning, courtyard planning, and creating that rather than the usual gridiron planning, because the city around, if you see the context, is also rather organic. And that's how we have taken this on. The challenge for us was to create all this FSI and at the same time integrate with existing 2 elevated metro lines that you see, which happen to be in a very awkward way crisscrossing the site. They were not on the edge of the site, they were not bifurcating the site, but they were ending up creating, which was already a very awkward shaped plot. It was further compounded, the challenge, by all these aspects of the crisscrossing viaducts. So I'm just going to show you a little video which shows you how the design has evolved. Those 2 white lines are the viaducts or the metro lines. So the idea was more about concentric planning rather than gridiron planning, and inspired by the lily pads, we took these lilies, as I call them, different clusters, and they were created in the entire site. Importantly, this project is a mixed-use project, and therefore you have a mix of uses like retail, commercial, offices, etc., residential. So along with IDOM, we created this kind of a development. And again, here you see, this is the new India International Convention Center. This is one of the venues where the G20 summit will be held. I'm sharing with you this project again to give you a sense of how Indian architecture is evolving. These kind of buildings earlier were seen in Tokyo, Germany, US, and these kind of places. Today, India is creating these kind of facilities which has never been seen by the country before. And we are proud and very grateful also that we happen to be involved in such projects. This project, which is total, is going to be about 20,000 crores. The first phase is creating this small building that you see with 6 gray squares. This happens to be, by the way, it looks small on this image, but happens to be the world's third largest convention center, and with a capacity of 10,000 seats. Up until now, as was mentioned by the principal in the beginning of the presentation, auditoriums of 500 seats or 1,000 seats. Never before India has seen an auditorium of 10,000 seats. So that's the kind of buildings. These buildings that you see here are large exhibition halls. Now, when I say large, I want to give you a sense of scale. This one building that you see where my cursor is equivalent to the size of 4 soccer fields. 4 soccer fields, not even one soccer field. And the spans are going up to 250 feet of each column spacing. So that is the incredible size and scale of buildings. This circular building is an indoor arena, which is going to be a capacity of 20,000. And what we have designed it is with a retractable roof. So in a good weather in Delhi, like you have now, the roof can actually be opened up. So this is the 10,000-seater convention center, inspired by the step wells, inspired by the elements of jalis and other traditional elements of Indian architecture, and yet having the world's largest LED facade. Never before in the world has this kind of a scale of an LED digital facade been created. This is the interchange station for a metro line. So the metro will come right in the heart of this big complex. And this is the transit hub that we have created from the underground metro. So you can take a light rail and go to the rest of the complex. This is the main foyer into those exhibition halls. You can see the scale of the building, the scale of the spaces. And then for me, what is important is about, as you might have by now realized, the integration of art with architecture. So this project is right next to the T3 airport in Delhi. So I felt that the moment anybody is landing into Delhi, right from when they look out of the airplane window, they should be able to see not just a flat, monotonous roof of 4 soccer fields, but they should be able to get this kind of a digital solar cells, which are not only capturing solar energy, but are inspired again by the Rangoli patterns. And this becomes the kind of art form you can see when you are landing into Delhi. So this is the first greet or first experience a visitor can have, rather than seeing what I'm sure you people have observed when you land in any city in a plane, the Syntex water tanks which are on the rooftops of every building. Why not create art on the rooftop? One more project I want to talk about is the India Pavilion, which we designed at the Expo Dubai. I want to talk about it because it's a building which is very different. It had a lot of challenges. To some, it might look like an orthogonal box, but the design process had so many challenges that the site which was given to India, out of that, 40% of the site was such that was to be taken away after the Expo. And the Indian government told me, but we want you to create a building which will remain permanent there after the Expo also. So therefore, I was by default confined to only 60% of the site. And to make matters more challenging, the client wanted the full FSI of the project to be built here, rather than reducing that. So that's how the building became, because the theme of the Expo was about mobility. So I thought, why not create a facade which is a mobile facade, which constantly changes and becomes a backdrop to show the diversity, the vivacity of India. And through that, you can keep representing the different patterns of India. So one week, if you're celebrating Assam, you show Assam on the digital facade. The other, you can show something else. So that's how you represent the diversity, rather than create a building which is either an architecture of Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Kerala. Why not create an architecture which constantly changes? The other reason for this also was that, imagine as an architect, if you are told by your client that you have to create a building which will remain a permanent building after the expo ends. Your natural question is going to be, what is that building going to be functioning as after the expo? To that, even though the expo has finished, the government even today doesn't have an answer. So I had to create a building which tomorrow could be a museum or an office or a library. And therefore I decided, let's have a facade where, depending on the 4-storied building, whatever that building is used for, we can open the windows, or we can transform the facade in any way so that you can control the amount of light and views and ventilation that goes into the building. And also in the hot climate of Dubai, this acted as a second skin. So this is what I wanted to share with you about the 5 decades. But I do want to end by sharing with you, young students, that sometimes you might hear from people that the architecture profession in India is not promising, and what are you doing in architecture, and how can you really make a difference? Now, I believe that no matter what the circumstances might be, if we have a sense of conviction, we can go out there and make a difference. So besides the architectural practice that I have shared with you, which I am involved in, I am also involved through our foundation, CP Kukreja Foundation for Design Excellence, and the very young and inspiring team that we have here in the office, involved in various initiatives. So one such initiative is what is in front of you on your screens, a new television series, which I'm going to be hosting, called The Tale of Two Cities. This is a program which, if you can mark up in your calendars, is going to be showcast on WION channel, which is part of Z Television Network, on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday afternoon. This will be on the WION channel, and it premieres on 29th of October. Now, what's this program about, and why am I doing it? I don't want to be a TV star, but what I want to showcase to the world, and incidentally, this program is not just in Delhi and Pune, it's going to be telecast in 170 countries around the world. That is the kind of enthusiasm the television network has about the show. So what I'm doing here is, I have been traveling around the world, and we have, our research team in the office selected 8 global cities, and in parallel, we chose 8 Indian cities. So I have traveled around the world and met with not the urban planners or architects, but actually the heads of state, presidents and prime ministers. So this image in front of you is of the Honorable President of Colombia, and he's a very famous man. He's just, his term has just ended last month, but he is a champion of climate change. He has written many books, and I went and met him in Colombia, and we took the city of Bogota, and he spoke about Bogota, and in our office we had done research, and I spoke about Ahmedabad. So we paired these 2 cities. Our pairing is not defined by physical dimensions or population of a city, but we have brought out interesting facets of the architecture, urban planning, and culture of cities. And through this program, what we are trying to showcase to the world, that today when you have wars like Russia, Ukraine, Lebanon, Israel, and all of those kind of things, the citizens in any part of the world, in any city, actually have so much in common. And there are so many common aspirations, so much we can learn from each other. For example, I don't know if you guys know, but Ahmedabad in India is one city which has BRT, bus rapid transit system, which it took inspiration from Bogota, which started it very successfully. This, I went and met the mayor of Mexico City. She's a Nobel Prize winner. She happens to be also the candidate for the next presidential elections of the country, and had a fascinating conversation with her where I discussed Mumbai and she discussed Mexico City. Then I went to and met with the former president of San Marino and their industries minister. and I interacted with them. I don't know, for those of you who might not know, San Marino is a small country. In fact, one of the smallest countries in the world, sitting in the middle of Italy. And can you believe it? Even though it has a population of just 34,000 people, one little part of Pune, small part of colony of Pune, 34,000 people, and it is still the oldest republic in the world. It has never been conquered. So with this city of state, you can say, of San Marino, I compared it with, if I was there with you, I would have started doing a quiz with you, but I compared it with this place in India called Auroville. And Auroville, as you might be knowing, is a very, very special place in India, which has its own laws, its own police, its own education policy. So it's very unique. So we compared the two. So you will get to know more about it in the show. And this, I went to the country called Albania, and there I met with the Prime Minister, and we discussed their capital, Tirana, and I talked about Panjim in Goa. So these are the fascinating conversations I've been having, and I hope you get to enjoy them on the TV show. But if you notice the image on the left, which is the Prime Minister's office, can you believe it? The Prime Minister of this country happens to be, he's a very, very dynamic man, inspiring. He's almost 7 feet tall, 6 feet 9 inches or something, tallest Prime Minister, I'm told, in the world. But more excitingly, he happens to be an artist by profession. So just look at his table, which is his Prime Minister's desk, and it has all the possible color mediums that you can think of, from sketch pens to pencil colors to crayons to watercolors. And on the walls is everything that he has sketched and doodled. So when I was chatting with him, he made me the state guest. I stayed in the state guest house, went out for lunch, my wife and I with the Prime Minister and his wife. Very warm person. Here with our politicians, it's not so easy to have these kind of exchanges. But look at easy conversations we had, his arm around my shoulder. And he told me that, you know, when people come to me, my ministers or my bureaucrats, to discuss the country's problems, I keep listening to them, but I also keep doodling. And he showed me his doodles. And he said, I don't note down points. I only doodle. And at the end of what that person has spoken to me, I give them my decision. Politician, share your comments or any questions. Yes, anything that you would like to discuss, I'm more than happy to answer to you.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much, sir. This was really an excellent presentation, which you have shown through videos, photographs, and your projects. And congratulations, sir, for your outstanding projects. I hope it has inspired many students out here. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Now I request architect Sneha to take up question answer session. Sneha?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you, sir. Your insight on India's built environment in last 5 decades was truly very awesome. And yes, actually it made me understand, and as well as students, that in spite of the fact that there are over the decades there were so many changes that took place in architectural field, but still that the common thread which linked each other were that the essence of a particular place, and also that how it coexists with nature. So it was one of the very brilliant thing which I personally found, and definitely all the students must have also found in your projects, because even if they were of different eras, there were some certain things which made them like a common thing, that they were, if we combine together, yes, we can actually say that it is done by a single person, because the thought process and everything clearly reflects those character. Yes, so truly, sir, it was a very crisp, very precise, and very informative session. So firstly, I would like to share the link for the feedback form for the students as well as the faculty attending the thing. So I will post it in the chat box. So I posted the link in the chat box. So accordingly, all the students and the faculty can fill in the feedback form. So, sir, you can also get an overview of the session. Yes, so coming to the question answer session. So, firstly, actually, I will like to put forth it to the students. If any of the students have got any of the particular questions to ask. So, sir is here. So, it's all over to you, students. If you have any of the questions to ask, you can just go ahead. Yes, one by one. If you have any of the questions, you can directly raise your hands and put forth, or otherwise you can just type it in the chat box so that I can read it to the sir. Well, sir, actually, some of the students, we had conducted a small session in all the colleges where they actually went on to read also the book which you had actually, published, the 5 decades of India's built environment. So there was some of the basic questionnaire also which was being made ready by the students who were actually very curious prior to this presentation also to know about those things. So firstly, I would like to just put forth some of these questions like what actually triggered you to start the CP Kukreja Foundation, and what are the activities which actually you conduct under this for the students? So can you just let us know about some of these activities which you conduct for the students, sir?
Sure. So the idea of the foundation is that we want to, while we are contributing to the built environment of the country and abroad through our projects, we also believe that we need a medium to be able to take on other initiatives which can have an indirect benefit or influence on our society and our built environment. The foundation, we want to engage with the young minds. We want to create avenues for encouraging creative students from creative fields such as architecture, interior design, art, who can come forward and participate, and they can be a platform to showcase their talent. Ours is a very difficult profession, and for a young budding architect to be able to climb the ladder of success or to be noticed and appreciated for his or her work, it's important that we should be able to create those avenues and platforms. So the foundation is basically one such platform where we hope that by being able to create this kind of a position, students can participate in its activities and thereby achieve recognition. So one of the things that we have been doing many competitions, scholarships, internships for students from time to time. And right now, as we speak, there is a competition which is being co-hosted by us with NASA. And I'm very happy to know that I was told that, it has created a record. Never before have more than 500 registrations. I was told the number is even more than that, probably close to 600. The number of registrations that have been done for that design competition by students in NASA. So that's through the NASA that has been organized. And we'll be giving not only cash prizes, but importantly, being able to take the students' work to international platforms as well. So these are the kind of initiatives we would be delighted if the young creative minds want to come and be part of CPK Foundation, part of CPK office, be part of some of these projects, or would like to share their ideas of what they would like to see the foundation carry out as activities. This has basically been done for you guys. It's a foundation meant for you, and we are there to help realize your dreams. So whatever you would like, let us know. We'd love to do that, and come and be part of the movement that we have here in the office. In our office, it's not just about bagging projects. It's about really trying to make a difference.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Actually, the students were really very curious to know all about this. Just wanted to ask, sir, some of the cases in the latter of the projects which you had shown, just this one of the questions that triggered one of the student, they were asking like how economics play a crucial role, because the projects you saw, like the convention centers which were of like capacity of 10,000 and everything. So, how are the economics work? Do these spaces really work in true sense of words? Like, are they so feasible? But how many times in a year do these places are actually active? and in other times, then what is the actual way these spaces could be more utilized in a proper way in that case?
Right. So it's a good question, but I want to share my thoughts with the young students here that, when I was in college also, and when I used to get crits on my design project, there was a lot of emphasis on the cost economy of it, or the frugality of it, or the budget of it. But I think India is now very differently poised from when I was a student. So while the budget and economy of a project will always be very, very important, today the way the country is being looked at internationally is different, which means if India has to really be, it is part of G20, but if it is the third or fourth most developed country in the world with the highest GDP, etc., whatever these kind of economic numbers are, if the country is poised to be a global leader, we need to have that kind of infrastructure and facilities. Now, convention centers earlier, as even I used to think, are considered white elephants, that how often will you use them? They might be used few days in a year, the rest they will be lying vacant. But that's not the way it today is. For example, this convention center of Dwarka, which we are building, I am told now that it's nearing completion, that there are orders being taken for bookings for even 2025. People have lined up, organizations, these kind of associations of trade, etc. And the charges, I was myself surprised. I never knew these are the kind of things, numbers that are there. But I believe the charge for renting one hall in that convention center, big hall, 1 day's charge, I believe, is 2 crores. They are charging 2 crores and they have bookings lined up like how? So with that, I think the payback period of such a mega project seems to be like less than 5 years. But what it is allowing the country to do, it is not just that a convention will be booked there and that is the end of the story. It is allowing business and commerce to grow. Because if India will become a destination, like we all know Hong Kong, Taiwan, why is Hong Kong or Dubai known for holding convention shows? Whether it is food exhibition, whether it is defense exhibition, whether it is aircraft exhibition. So this brings business to the country. So I think from that perspective, the economies of these projects far outshadow really the, all the sort of initial cost that is going into it.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Well, the next question was how your involvement and active participation in social issues. And so whatever you take part, you are very active socially also. You try to meet different kinds of people from different spectrums. So how does this help you in your professional life as an architect?
So I have always believed in the, because growing up, that's what I learned, that an architect is the captain of the ship. Architecture is the mother of all arts, and architects have to drive the entire design process. Or when you hear that Pandit Nehru was the architect of modern India, the term architect is synonymous with being visionaries, taking leadership positions. I have felt that in recent times in our profession, that leadership role has diminished. Clients have started looking at us as vendors or service providers. I don't believe in that. So therefore, my belief is I take it as a sense of duty, as a sense of responsibility, that I can go there and in my little way, being a small person, but I should try to make that big change in people's perceptions and awareness towards our profession. So like the television show which I just have spoken about, last year I hosted a television show that was my first ever television show, which was called Deciphering Design with Dikshu. Now, I don't know how many of you architects, young architecture students sitting there are knowing about this show, but I'm sure if I was to ask you with a raise of hands, how many of you know about Coffee with Karan? I'm sure you know that show. So from that take of Coffee with Karan, we came up with this show, Deciphering Design with Dikshu. And the purpose of that show was that in the 8 episodes, in each episode, I looked at one field of design, which was, for example, culinary design, food. If you travel across India, and even if I give you the example of a thali in Gujarat, a thali in Maharashtra, a thali in Andhra, a thali in Kolkata, they are totally differently designed. Same happens in transport, same happens in heritage. So I spoke to 8 big personalities where I engaged them in a conversation on that particular aspect of design, trying to decipher design. So with these kind of initiatives, I feel one can make a little bit of contribution in society. I'm saying all this not to tell you, oh, how great things I am doing. I'm only sharing this with the young, energetic minds, because my daughter is also an architect, and I know the kind of energy, the kind of vision, the kind of exposure you guys have is far more than I can claim. So if you can put your mind to it, today's generation, young generation, is just another level, never seen before. So if you put your mind to wanting to make a difference, you can go ahead and, I don't know, sky's the limit, make a huge difference.
Yes, thank you, sir. So there is one question by a student named Varat. Okay, he is asking, we cannot go ahead without knowing our past. I had a doubt that while designing these projects, have you taken any references from the heritage sites in India?
All the time. All the time. Our architecture here, or our attempt, I should say, of creating meaningful architecture is always inspired by the context. If you have read or heard my talks in the past, I always strive to create an architecture which is contextual. For me, architecture, like the CPWDs do, is not a rubber stamp. Ki yahi building Assam mein bana do, to yahi building Baramati mein bana do. That's not how architecture can be. It has to be inspired by the context. And in India, the beauty is that you go to any part of the country and you have inspiration, you have a heritage, you have traditional architecture or buildings which you can take inspiration from. Our idea is not to do copy-paste. Our idea is to take it in many different ways, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes literally, and sometimes aesthetically.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, so one of the questions is, what software competencies are advisable at students level, like from the pass out ones to the freshers? Like, are they so much important, and to what extent they should be stretched? Yes.
So I would just say that software, we all have to remember, is eventually a tool. It's only a medium. It's like if you ask an artist, is it better to do a watercolor or an oil on canvas? Which is the better way to do it? Or to pick up a pencil or a crayon? The same way today, softwares, whether it is Rhino, whether it is whichever one you name it, is, I believe, only a tool. When we look at having young architects come and join our office, of course, we look at your proficiencies in different tools of design, but more importantly, for me at least, it is the zest for design. It is the passion for trying to do something mazedar. If you have that passion, how you're going to do it, in what software? Software today, one is relevant, tomorrow it will be irrelevant. So I don't think that becomes so important.
Yes, thank you, sir. So I just wanted to ask you, which is one of your challenging works, which you found were actually really very challenging, a task for you to work on?
So that answer, I think my team here can probably answer better than I can answer, because one of the things we try to do in this office is that strive to take on challenging projects, because that's what keeps our DNA, that's what sort of is our DNA and keeps our sort of environment in the office so charged up. We like to take on challenging projects. So at the moment, I can say that we are very happy that we have been able to work on the tallest building of the country, the longest building in Asia, like 1 kilometer long, the largest span structure in the country, and things like that. So we enjoy that. We are very happy that at least the office has a reputation that we have delivered such projects and continue to get such projects. But I feel almost every project that our office works on is challenging.
Okay, just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on the blue-green infrastructure, and can that be implemented in a smart city mission?
No, absolutely. In fact, I must share with you, young guys, that you have heard so much about the term smart city. It was actually something which our office carried out a research about 9 years ago on the whole concept of smart city and presented it to the government of the idea of smart city, from where this whole thing has become what it has. But having said that, I feel that blue-green is really not only part of smart cities, but tomorrow part of smart towns and smart villages. That's the way human civilization will continue to be able to survive on this planet. So I think as architects and designers, you hold a prime responsibility that whatever you design, it could be the interiors of a shop you get tomorrow, it could be a mega TOD project like I showed you. In any project, any endeavor, you have to keep in mind the aspect of blue and green. Now, when I say shop, I don't mean you have to bring water into the shop or start growing trees, but I just mean that you need to understand that the environment has to be at the core of your design approach.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. Final question, what encouraged actually you to write this book, The 5 Decades of India's Built Environment? What was the motivation behind it, or what were the initial thoughts behind all these things?
So very honestly, it's something which evolved. There was no such big idea we had in mind. We were not even thinking really so seriously about it. But like I mentioned in the beginning, that when we started thinking of what initiatives we could take to celebrate 50 years of CPKA, we started going through what we had done in the last 50 years, and we discovered, much to our own surprise and amazement, that the breadth of work, the different kinds of work, the different approach that changed, whether it was in university planning or in hospital design or hotel design, so much changed over time, so much has happened. There was so much to share with or discover for us, that we felt, you know what, this needs to be shared with the world. It would be really sad and unfortunate if we just keep it to ourselves and we don't even share this kind of knowledge with the world. And that's what became the inspiration to create this book. And I have to say that the book is really, I can't take major credit for it. If my contribution was 20%, 80% of the driving force behind the book was my wife, Anantrao Kukreja, who led the effort, along with, of course, a fantastic team in the office.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So, yes, students, you have any of the questions still?
Yes, Sneha ma'am, we have one question.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, you have done many projects on rehabilitation. Okay. So, what are the concepts to facilitate, to reschedule the lifestyle of the affected people?
So I think this is more, I would say, a planning-oriented aspect that needs to be looked at. There are various strategies that can be, taken up for rehabilitation, and I would say there's no blanket solution to it. It depends on location to location, project to project, and even the kind of people who are being rehabilitated. For example, there is in Delhi a project which was undertaken of rehabilitation by the Delhi Development Authority. We are not involved in it, but it's to do with, it's called the Katputli colony, which means the puppeteers used to live in that area, and that area was being completely redeveloped. I know in many parts of our country, like the weaving community, the fishing community, or some places just slum dwellers, rag pickers. It depends really what kind of area is being redeveloped or rehabilitated, and I think the strategies come from that. Also comes the, like I said, other aspects of the location, the size of the site, what is in its vicinity. So accordingly, you can rehabilitate, because you can't just relocate people from A to B without giving them social amenities like healthcare, education, etc., etc.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir,
yes, just ma'am, just a quick reminder. Kindly, all of you just fill in the feedback forms, just because only those who fill the feedback forms, the certificates will be generated to them only. So please, students and all the other faculties who have joined, please kindly fill in the feedback form. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, now I will just hand it over to Almas ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Sneha ma'am. Thank you. Uh, Sir Kori sir wants to express his view, so I hand over to sir. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Very nice presentation. And I want to actually raise because I am also involved with my research work in rehabilitation for earthquake disaster. And as I really met with the people in our Bhuj, Kutch, this area in that 2001 earthquake, the 26th January. Also in 1993 earthquake in our Latur Killari area. So in both cases, when I visited, the rehabilitation work or the peoples involved into that particular area and the feedback from the affected people also. So as an architectural point of view, as you have said that this is normally depend upon the location, size, site, then the social particular whatever this connectivity of this particular area. But also, sir, just I want to know that if the involvement of NGOs is there from the particular selection of the site up to the completion, because normally for such project we have a lot of funding from the government as well as from the our other countries also, and we have to redesign and relocating totally different life pattern for these people. So, with your whatever the views, just I want to know if the NGOs, those who are working in this area for last so many years, what is their initiative or involvement to rehabilitate these structures along with the help of the architects, planners, and designers?
See, I think the role of NGOs comes in because not everywhere and for everything the government can come and play an active role. And in that sense, I think NGOs fill in a very important gap or take on a big responsibility. I think NGOs can play a very critical role in being able to present to the architects or planners a clear design brief of what is the history of that area or the project. I don't mean history, geographical history in that sense, but what that community's aspirations are, what that community has traditionally survived and thrived on, and like I said, their aspirations, their sensitivities, their allergies, so to speak, what cannot work in that community. And because NGOs are rooted to the ground, rooted to the people who belong there, they can come up with a clear, let's say, written brief or a brief which then the architect or planner can put into successful realization. Otherwise, it can be a very confused and at worst, it can be a disaster because let's say if an architect has to go and rehabilitate, whether it is the earthquake victims or tsunami or any other such calamity, you're trying to rehabilitate means you're giving a person a second life or you're bringing them back into a sense of normalcy which has got ruptured. And if an architect ends up just interacting, let's say, with the spokesperson or a handful of people, the result can be very distorted and colored. Therefore, the NGOs can play a very big role in giving a more objective, a more balanced brief to what is the aspirations of the people there. And thereby you can end up creating something which is, far better even than what the people were living in earlier.
Thank you, sir. Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, can we?
So I'm going to just remind the students here that I would love it if you were to send us your opinions or critical feedback, and feel free to be critical. I mean, as architects, we are all used to crits and criticism. So feel free to give your crit to the book if you get your hands on the book, and if you enjoy it or you don't enjoy it, because that's the only way one can improve. And more also, I would be excited to get your views on The Tale of Two Cities. So like I said, it starts every Saturday, 7:30 on VON channel, and Sundays, of course, again. But it starts on the 29th of October. The first episode is with the President of Colombia. So it would be really nice because, as I said, one of the avenues, one of the inspiration for me is you guys. I want to make a difference for your lives, your future, your profession as you practice it in times to come. So what better than getting your feedback, like I said, positive or critical or negative about what we are trying to do here with the foundation. So please do watch the show and let me know. And thank you very much again. Lovely to interact with all of you. Next time, I hope I can meet you in person. I'd be delighted to.
So very good thing. And also I want to, sir, request you that if it can be possible to dialogue with you with your projects in Delhi, because lot of our students, there may be some urban or semi-urban areas. They are not thought for such a big scale and on wide site project that just you have interacted with us. And definitely, sir, my so many students may be eager to visit Delhi with such particular campus projects. And in coming maybe future, maybe in winter vacation, summer vacation, definitely with visit and any your persons from your office or many authority that they can interact with the students on your projects, on your live projects, that will definitely benefit to them to see the actual scale projects and to interact with you or your firm's any associate member. So I also want to appeal you that also whatever your this coming series of presentation, we definitely all students, faculty will have that particular interaction or to see that. And so we'll give the wide publish to do that on our platform of our architecture school. So please hand over that your series and the timetable to our coordinator. So definitely, sir, we will eagerly waiting for your coming particular series. And I wish you and your all firm happy Diwali season coming. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I wish each one of you and all the students who are here a very happy Diwali and a great festive season. And of course, it's a great idea. We'll be happy to organize something like this for a group of students when you come. I know seeing is believing and seeing is learning. So we'll organize something for you as a site visit.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was really nice interacting with you. Now I request Professor Sunil Bhosle, sir, to conclude the session with a thanking note. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for your intriguing presentation. I'll just conclude. On behalf of Akhil Bharatiya Maratha Shikshan Parishad's Anantrao Pawar College of Architecture, Pune, in association with Shivaji Maratha College of Architecture, Pune, Bharatiya Vidyapeeth Deemed University College of Architecture, Pune, Vidya Pratishthan's College of Architecture, Baramati, and MET School of Architecture and Interior Design, Nashik, I, Professor Sunil Bhosle, sincerely thank our speaker for the day, Honorable Architect Dikshu Kukreja, for unfolding the kaleidoscopic and exuberant journey of the 5 decades of making our beloved country, India. It was indeed a time travel capsule for all of us to savor. Today's takeaways for everybody would be what I have jotted down for Architect Dikshu Kukreja is a mentor, he's a storyteller, he's a transformer, he's a humble and an inclusive person and a multidisciplinary person. And all the nostalgic history which you showed us was truly inspiring. I also thank Professor Priyanka Barge for the brief of the webinar, Dr. Rajendra Kohli for his welcome address, and brief thanks to Architect Vijay Garg from Delhi for making this happen, Professor Jagdish Kohli for biodata, which was very inspiring, the question and answer session by Sneha Chauhan, Swapnali Sutar for making the posters available and a wide publicity along all the social media and the certificates of the program. Architect Almas, my colleague, and Architect Professor Shivani for meticulously planning the event, which is spread across 4 colleges on an online basis. This is happening for the first time in Pune probably, and all the support staff here at a college. And also I must thank Architect Kukreja and his support staff at CPKA and Architect Rajendra Kumar for the background work which made the whole thing possible. Dues are also to our General Secretary, Mrs. Pramila Gaikwad, who made the premises available and made the event happen. And last not the least, but Dr. Rajendra B. Kohli, who is our beloved principal, for making it all happen and being the inspiring force behind all this thing. I definitely welcome you, sir. Next time when you come to Pune, we'll have a grand one-to-one online instead of an offline seminar. And it was definitely intriguing. We'll definitely read your books. We'll come back to you. And I myself will definitely see to it that I give you the feedback on the book, Your 5 Decades of India's Built Environment. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
I request everybody to please on your cameras. Professor Vikram Shah will take an online photograph of the event. Everybody, please on your cameras for a minute.
Yeah, come.
Vikram sir? Yeah, thank you very much. I declare the session closed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Nice feeling.